Games have always struggled to perfectly balance difficulty with challenge. Some games are meant to be casual, where you can experience things at your own pace without any real frustration. Others offer different levels of difficulty with baby mode, nobody plays this, the standard experience, and
Where are they at? Sometimes there's one up there. They usually come up there as well. Oh god. Oh my son of a bitch.
The harder the difficulty, you get nerfed, enemies get buffed, AI grows a brain or two and becomes laser accurate, or you just get more shit thrown at you. It feels so rare you find a single player or multiplayer game that's difficulty is designed around your skill level with plenty of room to grow, or gives you the flexibility, the freedom to make something more or less challenging depending on how you want to experience it. Yeah, you can no-hit speedrun Elden Ring at level 1 butt-ass naked with a stick if you want, or you can be strategic and approach the game completely differently. With summons and some planning, you can run through the game without dealing any damage just by healing and exploiting boss weaknesses. For me, that game kind of played out like that Iron Man movie, Live, Die, Repeat, where I couldn't just full send into things all ADHD like I do in Apex Legends. I had to be patient to learn boss moves, how to dodge or avoid them, maybe mix up my playstyle with different spells, weapons, or flasks, and with every frustrating death, I check how much progress I made from the last time. It's addicting to see your progress in real time, and that feeling you get when you're about to win and want to get greedy, but that voice in your head is telling you to be patient, knowing you're on the tippity top of the mountain, but you're only halfway there. Oh no! Is either infuriating or it's absolute pure bliss, and you want that again. Over time, games just have felt like they're moving more into that casual direction, either by design or with updates over time. Sure, games are more accessible than ever now, with things being free to play, skill-based matchmaking kind of working, different difficulty options and game mechanics like press X to parry, left trigger, right trigger, stop time, click head, drawn out quick time events where you press this button, you wait a bit, press another button, wait some more. Man, this isn't Halo. Well, and then there's Cyberpunk, where you literally don't have to do anything because the game just progresses for you regardless of your decision. Or those menu button presser simulators like the Telltale games. They're just not really games in my opinion, but they're pretty good stories and they are casual. Then there's the brain dead bullet sponges from games like The Division, Escort, Fetch Quest, Defend Here missions that seem to be in every game, and even removing skill-based things like kill streaks in favor of something that's guaranteed over time like score streaks. Halo eventually did this too with ordnance drops. But there are more interesting ways I've seen games cater to casual players, like in Unreal Tournament. I don't really remember the game mode, but the more kills you had, the bigger your head would be, making you an easier target to be headshotted, and the worst player would actually have a smaller head to support their tiny brain. And Mario Kart, it's a good example too, with the best power-ups. They're available only to whoever's in last place, and in either case though, if you're the pro gamer guy or girl, you know you are, you're still up there winning. It just makes things a little more interesting for you and whoever is losing, which I personally like that. B-hopping and punch boosting were these things in Apex Legends that raised the skill ceiling, but were removed to favor the casual majority. Crouch spamming gets complained about in a lot of games, and so does slide canceling, but the greatest debate of all is when a mouse and keyboard goes up against a controller and aim assist. Even when there's objective evidence, where should I put my hands? Here, objective evidence that aim assist is superior to mouse and keyboard, it's left in, because without it, the casual majority of players would be pretty frustrated, which would lead to a loss of players and less money for developers.
Halo knew that there weren't going to be any mouse and keyboard pros, okay? But they did what they needed to do, and they made it so mouse and keyboard has their own playlist to where they can play only mouse and keyboard players to keep them entertained and keep them involved in the game without them wanting to quit because they get dominated by controller players all the time. You can't nerf aim assist hard because it will make all the average and below average players in this game suck to the point where they don't want to play, and they are your majority of player base.
People want fair fights, and keeping it casual brings in more players, so aim assist equals more money. But as Kanye said, mo money, mo problems. And that sure seems true with some of the richest franchises, with Battlefield 2042 having a buggy identity crisis, no single-player campaign of any kind, like 8 weapons, a handful of vehicles, and generally unbalanced and poorly designed maps. Halo has been pumped with monetization, less customization, and less content at release since 343 took over with Halo 4. It happened with Halo 5, Halo Wars 2, and more recently with Halo Infinite. Same kind of thing with Assassin's Creed, and it feels like Call of Duty hasn't changed shit in over 10 years since Modern Warfare 2 or the OG Black Ops. And with release after release being unfinished jank from my favorites lately, I've honestly felt pretty down and haven't wanted to play as much as I used to. And being a mostly gaming content channel, it's been hard to make that content that I find to be fun, engaging, and entertaining, so I just haven't made any. And I wondered why. What was going on? Was I burnt out, playing the wrong types of games, getting too old, or were games just not as good as they used to feel? I explored that in another video that a lot of you connected with, but I was still at a loss. I spent the next couple months playing games like Stardew Valley and Spiritfarer while I mixed in some Apex and Halo with friends. None of it was terribly difficult or challenging, and sure, I'd have fun with it, but nothing really pulled me into wanting to play it every day. Until... I thought, oh, look, another Souls game. It's probably too hard, and you know, with responsibilities and all that, I probably don't have time or the patience to enjoy that meat grinder. But day after day, I kept seeing more positive reviews for the game and how people were saying it was FromSoft's most accessible game yet, whatever that meant. I thought it was just some new open world Dark Souls game that super fans were hyping up, kind of like how people acted before Diablo 3, Watch Dogs, Destiny, No Man's Sky, Assassin's Creed Unity, Cyberpunk, Battlefield 2042, and Halo Infinite. But this was different. Reviews stayed consistent, and I read people's stories. Like, I came across this 42-year-old guy about how they were afraid to try Elden Ring because of the perceived difficulty. I had this weird, like, inner battle thing where I didn't want to pay full price, full $60, $70 for a game if I was only going to be able to experience like 10% of it because I wasn't good enough. But then I remembered, you know, I beat Mile High Club on Veteran. Not only for myself, but for my friends too. I suffered through the auto-aim and grenade trenches of Call of Duty 2's Normandy and the FaZe Clan Jackal snipers of Halo 2. I've been Apex Predator, Onyx, and Halo and shit used to have to figure out games from their little 7-page manuals because message boards like Game FAQs or Reddit weren't even a thing, and mom sure wasn't gonna buy me those fat game guides. So I whipped Elden Ring into the Steam cart, booted it up, cat jammed the main theme, and got my shit pushed in by the tutorial crab thing. I came to respect enemies real quick after that and appreciated that there was very little artificial difficulty built into the game. Sure, there was some inventory management with what I had equipped with light, medium, and heavy loads, but I never had to worry about the become so over-encumbered crap that you can't move mechanic from other open world games like Skyrim or The Witcher. Even when my butthole was tighter than a camel's in a sandstorm during those parkour puzzles. There's no easy mode. You can't just swap the difficulty on the fly to make something easier if you're struggling. If an encounter is too difficult, you can go somewhere else to level up without worrying about the whole game scaling with you, like what happened in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, for example. Or the old Elder Scrolls games like Oblivion, where standard bandits at the beginning of the game later have some of the best armor and weapons to match your player level. When you level up or improve your weapon in Elden Ring, it actually feels like it matters, and your character gets more powerful in the world. Sometimes, though, it's not enough.
You are not ready.
I know.
Like everyone else, you want to learn the way to win, but never to accept the way to lose. To accept defeat, to learn to die is to be liberated from it. So when tomorrow comes, you must free your ambitious mind and learn the art of dying. May it be well with you, Mike.
You will still inevitably die, and quite a lot, but you learn to accept death, and once you do, it's liberating. And the game is forgiving with death by its placement of save points of grass and stakes of maraca. Compare this to some past Souls games or missions that you either have to fully complete or else you start all the way back over, like that one shitty GTA 4 car chase mission or those arcade games where if you couldn't run back to Papa quick enough to get a quarter to keep playing, you'd have to restart all over, or just, I already played this. Good thing that's not really a thing in Elden Ring, because you almost always can get right back into the fight thanks to those sites of grass. It keeps things less frustrating, and with how the game is designed with harder challenges as you progress, you end up falling into the flow state. Flow is that feeling you get when you're fully immersed in something, with complete focus and control over everything. Your body and mind reacting in perfect unison as you get absorbed and lose track of time, where nothing else seems to matter. You don't feel hunger, anger, sadness, just pure clarity, awareness, and happiness. This rare feeling has been referenced for thousands of years, and in the past 50 was studied by psychologists to understand how you can enter it. What they found was that first, there must be clear goals and progress made to establish structure and direction. Second, there must be clear and immediate feedback. This helps with changing demands and allows adjusting performance to maintain the flow state. And third, balance is required between the perceived challenge and your own perceived skill. Confidence in your ability to complete the task is essential.
I said, empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
Flow is an innately positive experience. It is known to produce intense feelings of enjoyment, an experience that is so enjoyable that it leads to positive affect and happiness in the long run. But why? Well, psychologists also learned that flow rapidly increases personal development and growth, which are both linked to short and long-term happiness. So if you want to get good quick at something, try getting yourself into a state of flow. I realized this is what I had been missing for months. Nothing was challenging me enough, so I felt bored. Elden Ring offered the challenge I was looking for, and it was because the game was designed around difficulty, exploration, and wonder. Instead of making you come back for daily challenges, shop rotations, limited time events, a battle pass, or other monetization crap that all do nothing to really challenge your skill. They just feel like pesky tasks that capitalize on your fear of missing out if you don't log in daily to check in. The game director for Elden Ring said this in an interview way back in 2018. We don't want to include a difficulty selection because we want to bring everyone to the same level of discussion and the same level of enjoyment. We want everyone to first face that challenge and to overcome it in some way that suits them as a player. We want everyone to feel that sense of accomplishment. We want everyone to feel elated and to join that discussion on the same level. We feel if there's different difficulties, that's going to segment and fragment the user base. People will have different experiences based on that differing difficulty level. This is something we take to heart when we design games. It's been the same way for previous titles, and it's pretty much the same with Sekiro and Elden Ring. When one of the harder bosses in the game, Radahn, was nerfed shortly after launch, players were upset because their experience was no longer comparable to those that fought him after the patch. We want the challenge, not for something to be inherently easy, because it removes all the creative ways to approach that challenge. Radahn could have been defeated 1v1, or you could use the horse to slowly chip away at his health over time, just like how you could exploit his weaknesses to this poison called Scarlet Rot, and with having several summonable allies at your side, you didn't even have to fight him yourself. You could just let the summons do the work for you, but all these creative answers to someone as challenging as Radahn meant nothing after his nerf because you could just stand there and poke him with a stick without much worry. When there's one difficulty level, you know you're getting the game the way it was meant to be played. It's no longer about balancing the game around the different difficulties. It's about designing in the freedom of choice in face of challenge and adding weight to your decisions. Crack open a dictionary and you'll find that difficulty is defined as something hard to deal with, manage, or overcome, whereas challenge is defined as to arouse or stimulate, especially by presenting with difficulties. Challenging games are about that tension, like that heart rate spike you get in the final circle of a battle royale or when you're the last man standing against all odds.
Nice, stay alive! You're insane!
In Path of Exile, you can make the endgame more challenging through the Atlas, where you can craft your own maps with modifiers that can nerf you, buff or increase the number of enemies, and improve the amount and rarity of loot dropped. It's a fun spin on creating challenge in your own creative ways, where the game just gives you the tools to do whatever you want. Because there's no difficulty slider or level scaling in Elden Ring, you can choose to go to more challenging areas and still be successful, but it's far more difficult if you're not as skilled. You can be creative with different tactics, or you can brute force it by going to other less challenging areas, leveling up, and coming back. In Elden Ring, force combat isn't required, but some encounters are more trivialized by using it, while fighting on foot is just as viable. It's the same concept in any shooter game, where you can choose to use the most meta, overpowered weapon or loadout, but after a while, maybe that starts to get boring, and you want to just mess around with something off meta to challenge yourself and find yourself having a lot more fun with it. With puzzles and exploration, it gets a bit tricky because you don't want it to be too confusing or frustrating, and you want to feel rewarded by finding interesting places, unique enemies, or incredible hidden items. And it better not be some one-use consumable, because I'll always hold on to it waiting for the perfect time to use it and then never do it because I'll probably die anyway and it'll go to waste, or some gimmicky durability mechanic item like in Breath of the Wild. Sure, I'll get some weapons and armor that might not fit with my build, but if I ever wanted to experiment with something new, at least I have that option. Ashes of War and Elden Ring are these things you can attach on and off at will to what I'll call standard weapons, and they create a whole new way to explore difficult areas and experience combat. I do think some of the dungeon puzzles can be too confusing. There's this one where you go down some stairs, through this familiar room, up some stairs, eventually jump back into the room you thought was familiar, but it's completely different. Do that whole process again, but wait, this time there's a flamethrower and that big chungus you killed earlier is looking over his friend, or is he? No, it's a whole new room, and apparently it's fake, so you continue on to what you think is that same familiar room, but this time it has a lever, so you pull it and go back down, and all of a sudden you're back where you started, but you were always running forwards, never backtracked, so you're left confused, thinking you're in some kind of time loop. After falling into the multiverse on a deviant timeline, you become scared, so you open up the wiki to find other deviants just like yourself. You accept your fate, you do it all over again, because damn it, I want to find that finger flicking stick.
Right.
And I had the wiki open a lot while I was playing this game because there's just so much that isn't explained in-game. Thankfully, the implicit design isn't quite as cutthroat as the old Moon Logic adventure games where you'd have to do specific tasks in order, like one long puzzle to successfully complete the entire game. Take Leisure Suit Larry 2. There's this part where you're stranded at sea in a lifeboat, and with each day that passes, you need to have collected specific items beforehand that you never would have thought were important. Day 4, good thing you packed sunscreen. Day 5, man, good thing you put that silly wig on before you jumped in the boat to protect you from the heat. Day 6, getting real thirsty now. Ah, yes, good thing you've got that massive soda you filled and stuffed in your pocket 30 minutes earlier. But now you've got your blood sugar level to worry about. You almost needed to buy the fat 244-page guidebook to finish this game, and there were many other popular games just like it back in the 80s and 90s. The difficulty of these adventure games was just too high, and once 3D first-person shooters started releasing in 1996, like Tomb Raider and Quake, they died off quickly. These newer games attracted casuals, not because they weren't hard, but because they were more linear, so it was much more obvious where you were supposed to go and what you were supposed to do. You progressed at a reasonable pace, the gameplay was challenging in a new way, and there were hidden secret areas to explore too. You can draw some similarities to Elden Ring, but with it being an open world game, the path for progressing is less obvious. You're guided by the light from the Sights of Grace, pointing you in the general direction of where you should go next. I pretty much never followed these, nor do I like to in open world games because I want to explore and gear up on my own. I don't want to just knock out the main story bosses and be done as soon as possible. I prefer doing side missions and quests along the way. But this is where I started having an issue with Elden Ring. In a game like Fallout or Skyrim, you get clear quest objective markers, can cycle through your active quests, and can check your progression on the map and in menus. None of this really exists in Elden Ring, aside from the "should I really try jumping?" messages from other players. So with the longer quests like Ronnie's or Hold Me Fia's, I would have never known where to go without the wiki. Apparently, I had skipped half of Fia's questline just by progressing through the game. I thought she was just a nice lady that gave me hugs when I needed them at the round table hold until I got jumped by some of her ghost homies in a massive underground cavern that clearly was designed for a camera boss fight, not these tiny guys. Then, after dealing with them, I expected some big thing to come crashing down onto me like in other parts of the game, but instead, you just find Fia chilling there for whatever reason. I honestly still don't know why, but I tried talking to her, which didn't do anything, so I looked it up and and apparently I had to go do a solid chunk of Ranni's quest line, which included flipping an entire building upside down, killing the foreskin bowling ball, and picking up the curse mark of death off who I think that's Ronnie? Then travel back to Fia. Then you have to do pillow talk with her several times until she lets you go. Go back to the site of grace, sit there for a while, which bores her so much she apparently falls asleep. And then, if you go inspect her, you'll go into a dream thing, and finally, it makes sense why that room is so big, because you have to fight Red Eyes Black Dragon. I mean, come on. I applaud whoever figured that whole thing out, because that is way too much for my flat brain. Many items in Elden Ring are also entirely missable if you kill certain NPCs, progress too far in the main quest or side quests, or even just do quest lines out of order. You'd probably never even know of the legendary items you miss without looking it up in a guide, but I shouldn't have to play through the game again just to follow an ultra-specific guide to get that one item that fits my build perfectly. There's also no explanation of what effects actually do. Take the magic Scorpion Charm, for example, an item that is very strong for mage builds, also a completely missable item, by the way, and all it says is raises magic attack but lowers damage negation. Okay, cool. Yeah, but by how much? Your stats don't change at all when you equip items that buff or nerf you by percentages. So again, back to the wiki, and apparently, did you know it increases magic attack power by 12%? The buff will stack multiplicatively with the magic shrouding crack tier potion, and the debuff is that you'll be taking 10% extra physical damage. For other items like the white mask helmet, again, another missable item, but pretty core to bleed builds, it doesn't even mention any stat changes in the default view of the item. You have to switch over to the item text to see that it slightly raises attack power when there is blood loss nearby. Sure, but by how much and for how long and how far away do I have to be from the blood loss for it to trigger? I know the answers to this because I checked the wiki, but I'm gonna leave you in the dark just like the game does. Fundamentally, the game is about discovery, and sure, I can discover that certain enemies are stronger, weaker, or immune to different status effects, and if you will smith a dragon across its face, it'll do more damage than other places, but there's so much that you can't understand unless you scientific method the shit out of the game with a calculator at the ready that it can feel frustrating at times. I can admit though, this isn't the core of Elden Ring, and the game does do a great job teaching combat without some lengthy tutorial or a ton of on-screen dialogue boxes. You'll learn right out of the gate that fall damage exists, and that you can touch bloodstains to see how others have died. If there are a bunch of bloodstains around a message or multiple messages in a row close together, there's probably a trap ahead. At the start, there's a short optional cave where you can learn the basics of targeting, rolling, power attacks, stance breaking, critical hits, blocking, parries, and reposts, but what's great is that it feels like any other cave in the game with a variety of enemies and a boss fight at the end. So not only do you learn some of those basic combat mechanics, but also how to progress and manage stamina and flasks. The first main story boss, Margit, teaches you to be patient and not spam roll with his combinations of delayed and quick attacks. After taking damage, you'll try to get away to heal, but you'll get punished if you're too far away or trying to heal at a bad time because he'll toss those little daggers at you. With you not being super confident in your skill yet, maybe you try jump attack with a few follow-up strikes and break his stance to get a critical hit in. The more confident you become, the more frequently you'll be dealing damage, and you'll notice his stance break more often as well. This is because of an invisible posture bar that all enemies apparently have, and although it's never explicitly explained, you know it exists because of that experience. The combat styles are many as well. You can go with the sword and board, power stance, two similar weapons, dodge roll with a two-handed greatsword, cast spells or summons, or again, Unga Bunga is a naked dude with a club. Unlike Smash or fighting style games where you do a lot of button mashing probably, this combat feels rhythmic and fluid regardless of the way you choose to play. I was curious how the game would have felt had I used spells instead of incantations or a shield instead of always two-handing my primary weapon. Do I want to replay the entire game as a different build? Me personally, not really, but I did respec my character several times just to try other styles out. Because almost any build, strategy, or style is viable, I felt in control of how I wanted to play the game, not stuck to some specific way the developers intended or confined to a weapon or meta build because the game is too hard without it. I want a challenge and the freedom to choose how I take on that challenge because creating fun is easier than designing it. What I think is most impressive is that this game was an eventuality. For 10 years, the developers iterated on their games, testing new mechanics and noting what players liked and didn't like. The OG Dark Souls was about tanking behind a shield to get a backstab. Dark Souls 2 introduced power stancing. Bloodborne took shields off the menu so players had to learn to dodge and be more aggressive, which ended up being a lot of two-handed dodge spam. In Dark Souls 3, bosses had more complex movesets, so immunity frames when rolling were more generous, and stamina blocking opened you up to critical strikes. Sekiro stressed the importance of block and deflect. Elden Ring takes all of this, wraps it up into a nice package, and then added onto it a dynamic, beautiful world ripe for discovery. Man, I can't tell you the last time I was excited to share my experiences about a game with my friends. It's probably been like 5, maybe 10 years. In a world of buggy, broken live service games with content ripped out to be designed around monetization, ridden with cheaters, be like Elden Ring. And please, this is from all of us, take the time you need to get it right the first time.